Welcome once again to the program, How to Control Your Emotions. And tonight I want to begin a series of discussions with the audience on the subject of motive and motivation. Now I could sit here and talk to you for hours on the subject, one idea following the other, and you could listen with your mouth open, and you may get something, but I'd much rather say a little and stop me, put your hand up to stop me from saying a lot, because I don't know when to stop once I get started. So don't be afraid to sort of jump in anytime you want to. I opened a dictionary this evening, and I thought this is a good place to begin. And the word logic jumped out at me, and of course I think the word logic comes from logos, which means not many people know the meaning of the logos. In the beginning there was the word, and the word was with God, and the word was God, etc., etc., etc. But actually logos is the supreme divine order in the universe, the supreme logic, and the supreme order of the universe that should govern the affairs of men and politics. That's where it should. Wouldn't it be wonderful if it could be that way? And then I happened to turn the dictionary, and the word impulse, it just turned to that page. And it fell in place, because impulse means the action, the force acting on an object. That could be an impulse, but it also spoke of a metaphysical force acting on the mind, a supernatural force. And herein begins our discussion, I believe, because we got motive and we got motivation. And motivation springs from a source. Are you the source of your own love? Are you the source of your own ordered life or chaotic life, whichever the case may be? What's the source of your impulse? I mean, where is your impulses coming from? Where's your logic? What order are you serving? If you're not subject to a divine order of things, then you are subject to a lower order of things. But certainly you're not your own motivation. Because if your own motivation, if you're the own source of original love, the fount of wisdom, you'd be God. You'd be what most atheists say there's no such thing as. We are all subject to influences. Are we not? Would you agree with that? And if you look at the order in our society, especially with politics, so the Democrats and the Republicans, the liberals and all the rest of them, you'll see there's nothing but chaos out there. People murdering each other, raping each other, speaking about individual rights and wanting to have man-boy relationships and believing that homosexuality is normal. You look at all this, and when you run it by your divine logic, if you let it go past the screen of your thoughts, the bandstand of your mind, you know something is screwy. See? For some people, logic is not logical at all. And some people are anti-logical. You ever live with a woman? You men all know. When you live with a woman, she's counter-logic. And one of the ways that you can be controlled, one of the ways you can be motivated, is by having your logic, your natural order of things, which you're born with, interfered with and separated from your order of logic that you were born with, so that you come under the sway of those people who have overshadowed that natural order of things.
Crazy logic.
Crazy logic. There's a crazy logic. Now,
can I break for 1 second?
I was watching the Oprah Winfrey show today,
Yes.
and she had a group of novelists on with different philosophies. One of the guys, can't think of his name now, but he's pretty successful. How to intimidate people, or
winning by an intimidation.
Yeah, right. He says everybody's God. I mean, it's completely crazy. He says I'm God, you're God, everybody's God, and you see the people in the audience going, Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I can buy that, And then a week later, another guy will come on there, or she had 3 other people, and the next woman will say something, and they'll go, that doesn't sound too bad. And you have all these people following all these
Right.
different crazy logics.
And what
you
is
talked
logic?
about you talked about motivation, where the people's motivation comes from. Now I can see where mine comes from. It's coming from below, because I'm doing all the
Some
things.
kind of pool of energies that come from the subconscious, like Freudian.
I'm being used by some other force, because one reason why I can see it, because I'm doing things I don't even want to do.
Good. Let's hold it right there,
Yeah.
because I appreciate that, and that will give me a little jump start. Right. The gentleman says, and very logically so, he is observing his own lack of logic. There was a philosopher, I wish I can remember his name. I'm not very good at name dropping. He says I even forgot what he said now. Talk about logic.
Oh, that guy.
That fella. Well, let that one go. But at least I know I don't know. A lot of people don't know they don't know. And they think everything that they know comes from them. Most people think they originate their own thoughts and their own impulses. And the reason is what they think that way is because they can't see that it isn't so. Because they've stopped seeing. Now, have you heard me speak about pride a lot? And, pride is something that thinks it's God and wants to hear that it is and wants that reinforcement from liars. And it needs to be caught up in the excitement of the lie to generate the illusion, to reinforce the illusion that they are something that they are not. Now, every time we are caught up in that impulse, every time we stoop to absorb that, to nurture our souls with that impulse, we are really rejecting the truth that we're not God. There's a commercial, and maybe this program will be played eons into the future and it won't have any significance, but there's this picture of this woman who she's a mother and she's a lover and she's the breadwinner, and she says, I bring home the bacon and I fry it in a pan and I never let that man forget he's a man. You remember that one? I never let him forget he's a man. Never let him forget. There's always someone there to reinforce the idea that you are something that you are not. And you buy into that by unconscious impulse. And unconscious impulse is exactly what makes you unconscious, so that when you become conscious of the wrong that you're caught up with and the behavior patterns that come from being caught up in the wrong, the pride feels this grating of conflict. And the impulse is to get away from reality. Because if you stayed alone in a room and didn't buy into any illusion or your fantasy or anything like that, didn't have some distraction that you could buy into, then you'd realize your ego or consciousness would feel annihilated. It would feel like you are the Christians call it being slain in the spirit. And you'd feel like you were dying. And you'd feel like you want to run out of a room. How many people wants to feel like they want to run out of a room? Come on, let's see a good show of hands. 1, 2, all together now. Yeah, that's right. See, there was a philosopher. It goes in there. Pascal, Blaise Pascal, it came to me. He says, all the problems he perceives in the world, all of them, very simple, very simply stated, all the problems of the world comes from not being able to sit still in a room. What a strange thing to say for a philosopher. I mean, he simplified all of the problems of the human race. The Bible says, the most important part of the Bible is, be still and know that I am God and you ain't. Forgot to put the other words in. I put the other words. The other words are mine. But I think it's well taken, right? Be still and know I am God. You're a jerk. And the truth of the matter is, this marvelous divine logic, this something that tells us what order is, that could become the impulse to order things. See, it could become our impulse, because the divine will, or a will, your impulse comes from, what did I say in the beginning of the program? There is motive and motivation. There is also a motive source. There's a source of our motivation, you see. There's no motivation without source. So if you don't have any motivation, where are you going to get it from? There's two places. The within above, if you believe in such a thing. The invisible within about, the invisible beyond, the intangible within above. Excuse all the words. Does it make the point? Or the tangible, the creature motivating, the creature motivating us creatures, or a greater creature. It's either the creator or the creature, something external to us. Now,
that's just what I was going to say.
I could see that the thing that was motivating me to do all these wrong things was coming from the outside, whether it was women, music, TV, and stuff. Those were the things that were feeding.
You're talking like a man who's suffering a lot.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Believe me. Yeah. And I could see those were the things that were feeding me, but they were more appealing than to sit down in the room, like you said, and have my
being
to
die,
in the spirit. Yeah, and to die. I keep putting it off till tomorrow. Well, tomorrow I'll be okay.
Well, what part of you? What part of you puts things off? What is talking to you and saying to you tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow? What enjoys the relationship with external motivation, the outer rather than the inner? What part of you opts for that?
The lower part.
Well, selfishness.
Selfishness, yeah.
Another word for selfishness is pridefulness.
Prideful, very
One of
much
us,
so, yeah.
part of it is trying to be God.
Right.
And the part of it's trying to be God is trying to deny God, must deny God. But how does it deny God? No one says, I deny God. You ain't there.
But it was so hard to do.
How do we do it though? We distract. We react. We look for something to interact with, to get our motivation and our identity. See, there's an identity, and then there's an id entity. It's the same word, but differently motivated, see? There's the identity, the selfish identity, the ego, the pride of life. This is all external. This is the serpent, the snake in the grass, the guileful politicians, the musicians, the entertainers,
Can I tell you something?
the lady, right?
Yeah. Can I tell you something? When I first started the downward spiral, right, I had a great consciousness. Every time I do something, I feel so bad. It's, oh, my God, I can never do that again. And I'd go a week and I wouldn't. Then I'd do it again, and then I'd, go a week and I would. Then all of a sudden, one morning I woke up. I did something wrong, and I didn't feel that bad. I says, well, am I better? You know what I mean? I had lost a lot of the goodness in me. I'd lost a lot of my consciousness.
You lost your conscience.
Yeah, my conscience, yeah.
Well, now we're going to speak later on. If we got the whole week, really five half-hour segments to really explore this in detail, and I don't have to go that fast. There is a place for knowing that you're doing something wrong and not feel guilty, and it being an improvement.
Well, I was hoping that was true, but it
may not be true. It may not be true in your
True.
case. So because it could be. Yes. Well, maybe I should bring it. See, it's really leaping ahead, and it may not keep for 2.5 hours from now. But you see, there is a state of consciousness where the person, having been seduced or caught up in the creature and not the creator, and having become the extension, having developed a selfish identity, which identity is in great conflict with the creator, invisible. You know you're wrong. No one has to tell you that you're wrong. If you have any sensitivity, any yen, any inclination for goodness at all in you, you have a presence in you left over. Psychiatrists and psychologists think it's some kind of primitive guilt, left over from the past. I say, yes, it's left over from the past because we've fallen away from the grace of it somewhere in the past. but it's still ever present, reminding us, saying, now listen, you're not listening to what for your own best interest. You're acting against your best interest. You see, you're being fooled. You think it's your best interest, but go ahead. Get involved and do your thing and doubt me and believe that guy and see what happens to you.
But it was lies.
You see that the lie lies. That's
I can see the.
See, that's a nice comment. Go ahead.
I was having fun. I could see I was having fun
because you're coming alive in
I was having a good time.
But what does that mean? Good time? It's
I was just
feeling good about being bad.
Yeah.
Feeling good about being selfish. Evolving the self. It feels like you're evolving and growing and coming into being complete. A complete ass, if you mind the expression. See.
That I never thought. That I knew.
You never think that when you're a complete ass.
No, I never thought that. No, I knew I was becoming a jerk, but
ass will do nicely. Don't change.
I knew I was becoming a jerk. It just didn't seem to matter as much as it did before.
No.
I knew I was.
Now we're coming to this. Now
Okay.
because I don't think it's going to wait since I brought the subject. Right? You're all rearing to understand this. Well, just to divert from the process of the negative to the positive, we all understand that as the negative develops, we become more conscious that it is negative. And as a matter of fact, the truth of the matter, man is first born of nature, then of spirit. If there was such a thing as an Adam and Eve, and a first fall, man was first born of spirit, then of nature. Because he became natural as he fell away from the spiritual. Have you noticed how that when every time you doubt yourself, you listen to the traitors of doubt, and something dark evolves in you, the darker sides and more bizarre habits and stranger thoughts, and you see, self-destructiveness and suicide. Something's working against life in you, see? But every time you doubt what's right, the sensuous, the animal side is more complete, and the spiritual side shrinks. We get less and less control with the divine logic that's in us, and the not-so-logic, which begins to seem more logical because it governs the way we think. It overwhelms. It supersedes our thinking.
I could see myself moving away from God like this.
But in other words, the more you develop,
and like this, and then one day I knew I was just
too far
away from Him, just so far away. I was just in hell. I mean, how was I going to get back?
But you knew you were.
Yeah, I knew I was. Yeah.
Well, that's the point I was making. Let me just make this point.
Okay.
So that you see that as long as there's a good intent inside you, every person who has an innate, not an innate love of the Creator, a destiny, if you like, with reality, to be the extension of that reality, like to live in heaven on earth. See, that's the whole idea, to be the extension of the divine logic in the universe that should dwell in the hearts of men and politics. Remember I said that in the beginning? That potential there grinds against you as every time you start to react. It's much easier to react to the world that has begat this selfishness, which selfishness cries out for reassurance that selfishness is right and logic is wrong. Conscience is wrong, you see, because it is an identity of its own. It's a spirit. It doesn't like to admit it's wrong because God doesn't like to be wrong. So if everybody hates to be wrong, we blame others, we make excuses, don't we? Everybody make excuses? And I know everybody says, well, doesn't everybody? Everybody makes, see? But the point is, there is this part of us that is born of nature, and we are sort of subject to that when we're born, because even when we come out of the mother's womb, the first thing that happens to us is that we get slapped around by the nurse to make us cry. And we're subject to all kinds of earthy impulses, the influences of the creature rather than the Creator. See, and the parents who don't understand how to deliver us to a Creator because they're subject to creature themselves, the order of the creature, the tyrants, the politicians. See, their mothers and fathers, the school teachers, and God knows what's, the pimps and the prostitutes and all the people who have something to gain through our weaknesses and keeping us weak. So you see, that from the very beginning we're robbed of our logic and our subservience to a higher will, because the spirit of the lower will, the lower order of thing, wants us and tricks us out of our obedience by making us obey it.
Am I different? Because I never made excuses.
No, hold it. No, you change it. Let me make the point.
Okay.
Forgive me.
Sorry.
Because you asked me, you all agree you want me to explain this this thing. Now, you've seen the process that we are naturally subject to the order of the creature. And as a result, we take shape from it. We even find comfort from it. We even find salvation from it. Drink, drugs, women. We find reassurances that the wrong is right. It's a philosophy. It becomes a religion. But the trouble is we're being shaped and structured in our life. It's acting through us. It is no longer us that functions. As you get older, you start to realize when you're young, you don't notice it much. But now as we get older, because the energy, the motivation, and our wrong motive starts to break down our organs, our glands, because we're running on AC current rather than DC, alternate current rather than direct current, see? And everything's starting to break down because we weren't designed, we weren't ordered that way, we weren't manufactured to respond this way. So now we come to a certain point in our lives where the wrong has developed first. The first man is nature. We come into the world wrong, and the wrong develops, but we realize the wrong because we still have that little spark, that destiny that makes us see it. And one day we realize that we're sick and tired of our own lives. We're sick and tired of, we begin to realize this is not our own will, that we're in some kind of hell, see, being ordered by some other spirit that is constantly impressing itself in subconscious currents that we can't understand, and that we're subject in some way, mysterious way. So there are some of us who begin to realize this, and in that marvelous logic, that marvelous moment of discovery, we can realize, if we realize the perfect realization that one, of ourselves we can do nothing, that even though we see the problem, we don't resent knowing it. Well, the light is so clear. If we love the truth, the purity of that truth will have us see this. One, we see the problem that we need to be saved because we can't save ourselves. Therefore, once you see you can't save yourself, you're not tempted to struggle. If you're tempted to struggle, you're tempted. Then you see, then you're saving yourself, then God waits for you to realize you can't save yourself. The next thing is not to resent knowing it. If your zipper was undone and I told you, and you resented me, next time your zipper was undone, I wouldn't tell you. So therefore, if your conscience tells you something and you resent knowing it, it's not going to tell you anymore because you're not welcome. It's not your friend. You got to be willing to have the conviction of your conscience. See, I don't have a conscience because I am in order. I'm in harmony with my conscience. I'm not in conflict with it. You're in conflict, great, but it means you've got to be saved. The conscience, whatever the conscience is an unspoken language. And you're not used to listening to what it's saying. Therefore, you haven't become wise. You're used to using impulses and excitements and stimulations to escape. And this comes from the other order. Your motive hasn't been right, and therefore the order of the not right motive, that which created you wrong, you're always crooning as though you croon sweetly for its presence. Up it comes to nurture you, see? So that once you discover this is the case, that you can't save yourself, and you don't resent knowing, then a strange thing will happen. Even though you know that you're doing wrong, you stop feeling guilty about doing that wrong because you know that how can you feel guilty about doing something wrong that you can't help? If God wants to save you, that's up to Him now. And you know something? It always happens when the realization is as perfect as I explained it. Most of us reach realizations less perfect than that, and we have to learn about struggling and resenting knowing and that sort of thing. But when you arrive at the point in your life where the logic is as perfect as I explained it to you, you are actually doing what Christ said, throwing all the responsibility for your sins upon Him. It's His fault. I've come to you, you've shown me I can't help myself. I want to be saved. So you have to save me. So here I am, save me. And you know something? That second you stop, you may not lose the impulse to do it, but you have control over it. You find you don't have to do it anymore. Part of you wants to, but you can say no. You have a choice. You can choose not to where you couldn't before. You've got back into grace again. It's been restored to you. Now, I hope you enjoyed that discussion this evening, and I want to say that possibly this week will be a notice that we're not going to do the program anymore. Maybe one more week, because the audience is not responding quick enough. And so I can't motivate you, and I will not motivate you. If you find that this is not nurturing to your soul, what is your impulse? There are 5,000 people stood around watching Christ being executed, and there's only 5 Roman soldiers playing pinochle with his clothes. And they could have pulled him down from there. 5,000 against 5, but they didn't have they're still controlled by the creature, not the creator, see. So what holds you back from supporting this broadcast? What holds you back is the creature. The creator, I'm sure, would have you support this program. It's tax deductible. We are a church, but it's a church of non-belongers. We come to your living room and we teach you how to be better people and teach you to be independent of this creature. Please support the program. Let it give you notice. I shall mention this every night this week and next week, hoping that we'll have some kind of response. You enjoy me better than Jim Baker? You can have Jim Baker back anytime you want. I think everybody's clamoring for him, but nobody wants little old winemaker me. At least buy the book, How Your Mind Can Keep You Well, and How to Control Your Emotions, $10. That would be nice if you could do that. Thanks for listening, and join us again. Welcome once again to the program, How to Control Your Emotions. And in our last session, we were talking about motivation and motive. And it ended up speaking about choice and how choiceless we all are because our motivations, because of motive, our motives are not pure, selfish, are conjoined, associated with the creature, the forces of the world around us, controlling us and servicing our selfishness. Why does a man get married? He marries a woman more selfish than himself. That's why you have a lot of trouble. And eventually she dominates you, correct? Or you either become a wimp or you beat her into the ground. But still, she'll come back serving your ego, trying to get ahead, but while he's putting you into the ground. So all people who service your selfishness become politicians, doctors, lawyers. Everybody who serves you and strokes your ego and helps you feel that you're right, they're there, mothers you. They all are eventual tyrants. You'll have tyrants of medicine, tyrants of drugs, tyrants of marriage, tyrants of politics, tyrants of alcohol, tyrants of religion. Everything that services the pride and makes you the wrong feel right, makes you feel good about yourself. You don't want to feel good about it. You need to feel bad about yourself. Because everything that makes you feel good about yourself saves you from seeing what's wrong, so you can't change. They rob you. They are grace robbers. And they become your unholy Holy Spirit. And you become addicted to them for love, for support. But then, when you submerge your will into their love, submerge, you're duplicating the relationship man should have with God. And their will gets into your mind and becomes your will. And you also develop the character of the dark side of the force, rather than the character of the light side of the force. You see, murder, killing, violence, cruelty, child molestation, all the opposite of what is moral and good, all the opposite of the divine order in the universe that should govern the affairs of men and politics, the dignity, the Apollos quality the godlike quality of human beings. To rob a person of life and joy and real happiness and give them a false happiness, a false joy of hurting others and motivating others. The school teachers motivate the children and rob them of their own flowering. Parents motivate their children and rob them, steal their identity, that part of us that could flower out of the inner motivation from the source, and then make the children addicted to the source of the original violation. So you've become violated by drugs, you go back to the pusher. You become violated by music, you become violated by women, you become a womanizer. Or in rebellion, a wife beater, trying to get away from her influence. You try to destroy what is destroying you. The trouble is, you need it, otherwise you don't exist, because you're not a man, you're a woman inside. So therefore, if you kill one woman, you destroy one woman, you have to go another one. And meanwhile, she gives you her influence or love, but you tend to become more feminine inside, and you rebel against your own femininity. But a feminine person, a feminine identity in this case is the only kind of person you know how to be. But when you realize you're that way, you begin to hate the source and to destroy what is destroying your masculinity. See? Trying to assert your own power. You can't get away from it, because such a man, such a person, his character can only be changed by repentance, by realizing there's something wrong with the way he exists, being controlled by the creature and not the Creator. Now, all sources of aberrant behavior, all negative thoughts, all the mistakes you ever make in your life, all the bad judgments, all the strange impulses that hurt and not help, all the thoughts of suicide, all the wife beating, all the children hurting, abuse. It's all coming from a center, a spiritual center, because man is spiritual. And the whole process of motive and motivation is a spiritual one, where we refer the whole being over to one source or the other through choice. Now, if there was such a person as Adam, if there was such a man as Adam, which originated sin and the whole human race, sin operating through the whole human race. If there was such a person, there would only have been one choice. Choose between good. You don't remember choosing good from evil. You're just born subject to that influence, aren't you? Hopefully a parent tries to teach you about that, to keep you from it, but look how you naturally want to go to parties and take drugs and do all the things and go along with the crowd and look for the approval of the darkness, because the whole world out there looks more exciting than sitting alone in a room and finding who you really are, which you eventually have to do anyway when you find out the world hasn't got it, when you thought it had. But the fact that you think it does, and because you believe, is a belief system. And this belief system is part and parcel of our dark nature. And this belief that part of us, we all want to try to be God. We all think we're God, and we want to try to, and we all relate to those who worship us, and we worship those who worship us, and we love those who love us. And we caught up in with those who see us in as a good light. And the result of all that is that we don't have our own mind, but we have the will of those who reinforce the original lie in us. See? And keep us from repenting. See, but I'm going to say one more time, and I'm going to take the question. If it was true that one man had the choice between playing God and being God, and if there was a seductiveness operating outside himself, saying, hey, man, this is how you can be God, right? And don't listen to your conscience. Eat of this forbidden fruit, and you'll get a high. And you can keep eating that forbidden fruit, and I'll show you how to eat it. See what I'm saying? If there was that choice, the choice would have been made, and from that point onwards, the man, if it was Adam, would have been separated from the ground of his original divine logic and reason that should order the affairs of man and God and the universe. It's separated from that order of things, which would have been perfect and beautiful, and come under the other order. And the only way that he could get back, the only way that man could ever get back if there's a spiritual principle involved, is to say, sorry, Dad, I'm wrong. But pride entering at that point, because that's what wants to be God, pride, can never admit it's wrong. How hard is it to be corrected? Have you ever tried to correct somebody? It's a thankless task to correct someone. Tell them how wonderful they are, and they love you, but don't tell them they're not so wonderful. They won't speak to you. You lose their friendship. You daren't speak up. You're afraid to hurt people's feelings because you love them and they'll love you. So you have to lie to them and they lie back to you. And the minute you tell them the truth, they'll cut your support, cut that which you need from them away. So your own selfishness doesn't tell the truth because you know that people don't like it and you don't like it either. Because if you tell them the truth, they'll cut your lies away. They won't give you the love that you've depended on, grown accustomed to, and growing out from, and grown into, away from reality. And therefore it will leave you alone with yourself, realizing pain, conflict, something wrong with the way you exist, and your ego can't take it. Back to the original idea again. If there was that man, he would have been separated from that ground of his being, and from that point onwards, until he'd said he was sorry, which none of us can do. We don't even, when we say we're sorry, we don't even mean it. We don't even know how to mean it. We don't even know how to be sincere. We have to work ourselves sometimes into an emotional state to pretend we're sorry. We have to pretend to cry when someone dies when we don't really want to cry. See? So until that magic word at the threshold of reality where it's real, where you are repented, you come back to that reality, and as you get closer to the door, you'd feel more pain. You know, if you had done something wrong to your dad and stole something from him and gone off with the boys, you know how difficult it is to face your father and how easy it is to get reassurance that wrong is right from the fellas, until they took you for everything they got and you're living like a pig in the sty, and then you realize they're not your friends, and you realize your only friend was your dad. How difficult it would be to come back to your father's house. And as you got closer to the house, the pain will get greater. And you think, my God, he's going to scream and yell at me. And you open the door and you see that all he ever wanted you was to repent and to be sorry, because he cries because he's glad you came back. That's the story of the prodigal son. And it's the same with your conscience. You think conscience is a bad thing, and you think your friends are a good thing, and you keep looking to the reassurance of your friends, and they only put more of their lifestyle into you. More reason to be fearful of coming back to your conscience. More reason for being fearful of sitting alone in a room, you see. But if there was a truth that man fell away from that first, he and his progeny, children, his offspring, it would be true that the Bible says that men are born in sin and have to be saved from it. It would be true. And you could see that you do need to be saved, but there's a magical process which the church has not taught you. It doesn't even understand it itself. It got lost 1,000 years ago or more. And I'm showing it to you right now. There is a process. Salvation is more or less a process of coming back to the door and being relieved, and then beginning to be able to live the life that you should have lived, not responding to the impulses of temptation. Do you follow that? So you're all choiceless. You cannot make a choice. And the truth of the matter is, you don't have any free moral choice. No such thing. You take the cigarette smoker and says, I can stop smoking if I want to. That's a cop-out. He can't want to, but he thinks he doesn't want to because he thinks it's his own idea. He's got a self-destructive habit, and then he says, I do it because I like it, because it's my choice. He can only choose what he's compelled to do and rationalize it. Listen to yourself. All of you have something like that in your brain somewhere. So what I want to make you realize, that you don't have an original thought in your head, except to realize you don't have an original thought in your head. Question.
Okay, you sort of touched on it. It seems to me that what we're all trying to accomplish is to kill off our egos, right?
Well, no, you don't want to kill off your ego, because you end up killing yourself then without any hope of redemption. You want to starve the pride of its brain food. You must, in other words, in order to do that, a very special process is involved. The process I practically described in short a few moments ago. We have to find salvation from giving into our impulses. We don't have the power of choice anymore. The choice, our ability to choose, is always to go along with what seems natural and the most powerful impulse that serves our selfishness. For instance, the sexual one is the most powerful one, or food. You always eat the wrong food, and you know you shouldn't eat this, and you know it's bad for your heart, and you know every time you eat something wrong, you know it's wrong, but yet you think you're going to die, and if you don't. And then you discover you die if you do. Now, it's a dilemma. I die if I don't, and I die because I did. You see? Well, now, how do you make the choices to free yourself from where's the power? Is that the question kill it?
It seems, isn't our ego what makes us prideful, what makes us want to be our own God? Isn't that what drives us?
There's a healthy ego, and then there's an unhealthy ego. Because ego is the soul. And the soul either with the inclination to love God or to be God. And if the inclination is to be God, there's a void. We don't know how to be anything at all, because all of our impulse, all of who we are, the center of our being would be filled with His presence. And so it's like, you know when you see a child, it looks like his father, and someone says, You know, he looks just like his father. He acts just like his father. And, you know, the mother feels very proud, or everybody's, because he's reflecting his father. Well, it's the same thing. The person who lives in the divine presence will reflect the Father. He has no identity of his own. He does not exist, but the Father exists in him. And he exists in the Father. See? He doesn't exist, but the Father exists in him. The pride is put aside, and the character of the Father enters, and he shines like a sun. See?
It's like Paul said, I don't live, but...
Wait, 1 second. Go ahead. Go ahead.
But Paul the Apostle said that I don't live, but the Father lives within me.
Yes, but therefore I live.
Therefore I live.
Right.
Yeah.
Now that's exactly the way it is. Now, the reverse of the case is in the satanic quality. Is that when you try to play God and try to steal the thunder, and when you are related to those selfish experiences, those stimulations, the music, the distractions, all of which have the power to pull you in a way and renew something in you that is selfish. Everything, there's a power, there's something about distraction that pulls you away from knowing. It could be distraction in your thoughts, it could be music in your head. See, it pulls you away from realizing guilt. Something's wrong. And the very fact that you submit to that and allowed yourself to be pulled away, or even encourage it, involves you with that source. And secretly, that source is the opposite of good. Let's call it evil. But you do not realize evil is in you, and you are in evil. It's the same principle. I am in God, and God is in me. I do not exist, but yet I exist, right? Because you have the character of God in you. You know, heaven on earth. Exactly the same thing. You do not realize that the evil is just as invisible, and it is lurking behind the foliage of the distraction that you're employing and using. And therefore, distractions feel like happiness. Distractions feel like joy. But it's only because you're cheating. You're thumbing your nose at guilt. It takes you away from guilt and gives you a sense of innocence, of feeling okay when you're not. But then, the divine presence exists and makes you feel that much more self-conscious. Adam was self-conscious. That's why the first impulse he had was to put fig leaves over themselves, because the first thing he noticed is he felt awkward. He felt his sexuality. The first impulse of failing is sexuality, believe it or not. Food, the compulsion to eat, and beyond that, the sexual impulse, because when man dies, when man separates from the ground of his original being, see, it's death coming alive. He inherits the life that leads to death. And it's the pride in him, which is the root. You know, you can take a whole nation of people, and deceive it, and make everybody serve the Ayatollah, or Hitler, or Mussolini. You can because you control the whole body through a belief system. That's the art of rhetoric, deceitfulness, seduction, to make a lie seem like the truth, a right seem like a wrong. And when you do that, you're distracted, you start to believe in the wrong. And you're separated from what is right. And there's an emptiness that's got to be filled. Once you fall away from reality, there's an emptiness. And you don't know how, you've got to model yourself after something. And the pridefulness that it enters models itself after everything that's wrong. Monkeys, the Greeks made statues, to be caught up in the works of their own hands, in poetry. You look at the young people who their idols are. Rock and roll star, degenerate rock and roll, who defecate on the stage. Some of them think so low, right? You're caught up in this distraction. And distraction pulls you away from reality, and it involves you with another will, another spirit, and you feel fulfilled. And it's this fulfillment, the involvement with this hidden will. And as long as you're involved with this hidden will, which keeps you from seeing reality, feeling guilty, you cannot know that the will you have is not your own. It makes you think that the will you have is your own will, and you walk into all kinds of situations and tragedies with your eyes wide open, thinking you're going into heaven and you're going into hell. And even if you know that it's wrong, you'll do it anyway. Because where wrong is, there's the excitement of reinforcement of pride. You've got to be close to something wrong. At the end of your life, the more wrong it is, the more you like it. The more obviously rotten the preachers on TV, the more obviously phony, all those plastic people. To you and me, we think, why do these people listening send their money? Thousands of people sending these money to these jerks. Obvious jerks, because we got our brains still. We have awareness still. We're not so far down in the muck as they are. But they are plastic people, and they have to have plastic preachers. And the more obviously rotten they are, and more obviously phony they are, the more it matches the obviously the phony in themselves and gives it reality. See, it validates it. I'm talking too much. Am I talking too much?
Okay. What you're saying is
Who are you?
the guy that started all of this.
Where's this guy come from?
What you're saying is there's a God-inspired ego and there's
Is
a
it
evil-inspired ego.
That's right, there is.
And you, like it says in the Bible, the truth will set you free.
To let yourself realize. You keep running. Why do you keep running? Because you keep choosing. See that? Do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah, exactly. We keep choosing in a compulsive way, and we've got to realize we are choosing drugs, music, the wrong kind of friends, the wrong kind of wives, the wrong kind of husbands, because it's the wrong that reinforces the wrong in us. Our whole life revolves around evil. Evil loves us as we are. We hate evil. We love it, and we are loved by it. And we hate, and we are hated. But hate is an emotional distraction. You need something to hate because you're bonded. Hate is an emotional bond. When you're upset, you are emotionally bonded. You get closer to the thing that's upset you, closer to the source of motivation that made you as you are. Some people are compulsively upset. They are upset addicts. They are compelled to be angry, addicted to being angry. Aren't most of you addicted to being angry? You can't stop yourself because maybe a long time ago, the first trauma in your life that robbed you from your... It's go.
Okay, sometimes I get confused. You can straighten me out on this. You feel guilt when you get angry, and then you feel guilt sometimes when you know you're doing something wrong, and then sometimes you get confused. You don't know which guilt is which. You see what I'm saying?
You should have let me keep going.
Who's on first? It's like, I'll feel guilty.
Sometimes you feel guilty for not feeling guilty.
Yeah, and then sometimes you feel guilty when it's
still
anger-inflicted guilt.
But it's not a clear question.
Well, it's like, okay.
That's coming out of confusion.
I know, that's just what I'm saying.
Sit down then. Just sit down then. Wait.
Okay.
Wait, because it goes nowhere. It goes nowhere.
I'll get it more clear.
That's the idea. Anybody else have a question?
Yeah, you were talking about distractions and stuff, and you know how soap operas are on every day and they distract people constantly. And you're talking about when people get so distracted, they go into situations. It's a saying that goes, a fool will go where an angel will fear to tread. Right. With all these total, we're just inundated with distractions. That's why the world is the way it is today.
Now look, I hold it right there, because we only got 4 minutes.
Okay.
Distractions. If you take a child, put him in front of a television set, no supervision. There are exceptions to that because some children learn what not to do. When I watch television and let my kids watch television, I guided them and I showed them, the world came into the living room and I showed them what not to be. You see, you can use the television to show people how stupid people are. There's a little guidance there. So the television never hurt my kids because they learned, how the ads motivated people in the wrong way, and I taught them all that. So they grew up detached from it, learning from the negative and being free from it. But if you take a child and put him in front of a television set and just let him be caught up with TV, right? You know what's going to happen? Turn to a criminal. Because you see, this is a nice ending for our idea here, because if this child caught up, it doesn't matter what's on television. If distraction couldn't have any element of bad in it, because bad is what stimulates the bad in us to feel good. Only bad can motivate, can provide what egos need. It's only something bad. That's why to people who have good taste and have common sense, most of the stuff you see on television is absolute junk. Filth. Disgusting. Yuck. See? Wall to wall nothing. But all those nothings are caught up in it. Now, so that in order to do the service, in order to have a captive audience, to capitalize on this need for distraction and to fulfill the ego, nothing is put on television, nothing is put on radio, just noises and different melodies and variations of the same thing. You say, becoming extremely sophisticated, and it looks like culture. We call it culture. You see? And you see, it's absolutely incredible to see these idiots were being rewarded for being great. These lowlifes. But, as I said before, it doesn't have to be any more than distraction for you to be pulled into the nothing of it. Because remember, nothing is something in the kingdom of hell. And something is nothing. You see, it's the other way around. See, it's groovy when it's crap.
Are you saying they could just like ring a bell?
Yes, and it rings this bell and it provides the service of the ego, and it's just the noise and the humdrum and the nonsense and the yelling and the screaming, right? It pulls you in and it puts into you a character that's opposite of what's good. And then this character inside will pick up how to be from all the wrong examples. It learns from its father. It learns from what it perceives. Where we would learn not to be that way, it learns to be that way. And therefore you have a whole generation of degenerates growing up without any morals, violent, cruel, and if you educate it, it only becomes an educated savage. It just hurts you more cleverly, and more skillfully. Well, anyway, thank you for this half hour. We will be on this week, perhaps, and next week for the last time, because we're not getting any support. 1/5. The last 3 months I've been on, I've lost everything. Tens of thousands of dollars, maybe $30,000, because not enough people see fit to support this program, and I'm not going to be a motivator to do it. You either do it because of the goodness of your heart, and if you're not any good, to hell with you. You can't have this program. It depends upon the good people in the audience to be moved. No motivation, tax deductible. We're a non-profit organization, a church, but we don't want you. We want you to be yourself. Thanks for listening, and join us in our next program. Welcome once again to the program, How to Control Your Emotions. And our last session, we were talking about motivation and motive and guilt because of the wrong motivations, becoming wrong people, and feeling guilty about being a wrong person. And we came to the threshold of an understanding, I think, that which I want to emphasize. And that emphasis is when you realize that you exist in a wrong way, that you're taking form from a different force, from the dark side rather than the bright side, for which reason you have conscience. When you realize this, and you know it for yourself, now here's the secret. And here's a very big part of the secret. You must know that you are wrong without asking the priest, the rabbi, the butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker. Am I wrong? What do you think? No, I'm not. You're wrong. I've done that. See? I don't see anything wrong with that. It's fun. I don't even know the negative way people talk, because I'm mostly tuned into the positive. But people will always, if you ask somebody, am I wrong for doing this? And they'll say, yes, you are. Even that would rob you of salvation. You must know it for yourself. And even when you're right, you've got a great idea, and you want to act on it. But the minute you get reassurance that it's right from somebody else, even if they agree with you, you will lose the impulse. Haven't you noticed that before? What do you think of this idea? Hey, I think it's a wonderful idea. You should do it. The minute someone agrees, that right is right. An uncivilized, uncultured person, unlike myself, pardon me. In other words, you could bounce something off of me and I won't rob it from you. I know when you bounce something off me, I know how to enhance your sense of knowing what right is. That's what I'm doing here all the time. For the most part, I'm telling you what wrong is. See, I can increase your faith by many, many ways, but I have a method, and I won't go into it now, of reinforcing your faith in what's right in yourself and putting you back on yourself all the time. Putting you back on yourself is the whole thrust of this program. So if you came up to me and asked me a specific thing, is that right? I'll say, well, what do you think? See, you have to decide for yourself, don't you see? It would come back to that. My whole program is to get you in individual turning points, thresholds, decisions, to see it for yourself. But when you know that you're wrong, you're absolutely sure that you're wrong. That's right. Because only then can you repent. And this knowing that you're wrong is the basis of knowing that you're right when you're right. Who understands what I'm saying? Because before you can ever be right, you have to know that you're wrong. Before you can be absolutely sure that you're right, absolutely sure, like I am. I mean, I really unnerve a lot of people. Because I'm so sure that I'm right, it blows their sense of their confidence away. Most people are confident because they think they're right and there's no one strong enough to show them that they're not. And they can sort of bamboozle everybody around them, right? Your mother does that all the time, doesn't she? She's getting better, good. But absolutely, the first truth you see is the awful truth about yourself. Okay? And when you are absolutely sure that you are wrong, in the light of this light, between you and yourself, between you and your Creator, when you know that and your conscience convicts you, and there's no doubt, watch for the doubt. There's no doubt that what you're doing is wrong in your life. Then a marvelous change can take place. A marvelous change can take place, so much so that now you come, by admitting you're wrong, the pride of life starts to disappear, because the pride of life is preserved by denying that you're wrong, by doubting that you're wrong. We always have these little doubts about, well, maybe we're not wrong. We don't really believe that we're wrong. And we look for support from friends who think that's not wrong either. See what I mean? In different ways. Or we believe we're right and we have other people who help us believe we're right. But when we believe we're right, we're really doubting that we're wrong. So even being positive, even believing in ourselves, even believing the good about ourselves is a negative. Because if the good we want to believe in ourselves isn't true, it's still a denial of truth, isn't it? If we want to believe that we're right, and if we want to feel happy when we're really miserable, and we want to feel right, and it seems positive to feel right and not doubt ourselves, well, maybe we should doubt ourselves. There's a positive doubt, and there's a negative doubt. There's a positive doubt that says you're wrong when you're wrong. See? And when you know that you're wrong, when you're wrong, that is the beginning of faith. But if you doubt that you're wrong and think that you're right and have everybody believe in you and you believe in yourself, you are doubting truth in believing in yourself. And there is a kind of believing in yourself that is dangerous. Again, I emphasize it. When you are alone with yourself and you know that you're wrong, and admit that to yourself and don't run from it, the truth will overtake you. There'll be a pressure. See, there's a pressure coming from within you which will overwhelm you. And, well, let me put it this way. When you react to some stress, when you react to temptation, very strong excitement, and you react to it, the pressure keeps building up, and eventually you give in to it, and then it gets into you. Now, what is in you is wrong. What is in you enjoys the pressure because it is evolving out of the pressure. The identity is evolving out of this pressure. And it can't sit still, because when it sits still, without pressure, without excitement, without its stimulation to help it exist, something awful happens. It starts to die. It needs the pressure to exist because it was born of pressure. So when you look for excitement, you're seeking the pressure to help the fallen self exist, to help the fallen self doubt that it's not doubt itself, when you should be doubting yourself. But when you sit still and face yourself, without this pressure, without looking for the excitement to involve yourself in, escape into, then another pressure builds up inside you called conscience. And if you don't run from this conscience, don't run away from it into the pressure to build this other self, if you don't run into that and stay there till giant drops of sweat come down your forehead like giant drops of blood, if you just grit your teeth and not run out of the room into your usual excitements, the pressure on the inside will build and something will snap. And it is like opening a floodgate. Something will come into you and drive, kill, slay that other part of you. Now you become addicted to sitting still and experiencing truth, the pressures of truth, and evolving from it. See what I mean? That you're built out of one or two pressures. The gentleman there first.
Roy, I noticed in the last couple of years, maybe 3 years, occasionally I would go out to work. And then while I was working, I could be working an hour, I could be working 2 or 3 hours. But sometime during that time, I would feel a nauseous feeling in me, my stomach, and just like I was going to vomit or something else. And I got to thinking about it while we were during the session here, because I couldn't figure out what was causing it. It seemed like it was reminding me something in the past, and yet I couldn't correlate it with anything. But while we were sitting here listening to you, while I was sitting here listening to you, it came to me that possibly that before I went out to work, I was thinking, man, I'm going to get this done, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that, and I'm going to get all these things accomplished, and then I get out there and I'm going gung-ho, and then pretty soon I feel this deal, and then I have to quit. Now, because I just have to go back in the house and just sit down.
Now we're coming back to the idea of motive and motivation. But you've always been motivated by the wrong things. Pressure. You're a child of pressure. And you have guilt as a result. And you find that you yield to the pressure because the spirit of pressure is your God. And you're made out of its love. You understand? Who understands that? Do you really? Let's see a show of hands. 1, 2, 3. Good. Good. See now, John, I know this gentleman's name, I've known him for a long time, just brought up the principle of setting goals for yourself, to pressure yourself. See, you, in your ego, have no divine love. When you fall away from love, when you doubt what's right, when you want to play God, when you always want to be right and never wrong, then the divine order, the logos of the universe cannot save you and motivate you and put into you His nature and all the good that will come out of being having His intelligence, His bright, all the good that's in store for you, the kingdom of heaven on earth. Cannot do it. The eye hath not seen, the ear heard, neither has it entered into the heart of man what God hath prepared for those that love Him. But we're too loving our pleasures. We're loving that which loves us and loves what's wrong with us and makes what's wrong with us feel good about itself. And we're addicted to that involvement. You see, I've said all that before. But you see, the moment we are separated from that, and we are separated from birth, the true and divine motivation, we're subject to the other forces, and we don't see them moving in us because we simply don't see. We're so so used to excuses. We have certain friends. We have strategic things, a strategic drink, a strategic phone call. See? You got it? A strategic salami sandwich. See? All timed to reinforce the identity and not to see. And then we scratch our wooden head and wonders why everything's going wrong. But now, this self-motivation, the stick and carrot philosophy, you get up in the morning and you have to provide motivation. You have to set a goal. So the woman gets up in the morning and she says, today I'm going to go to the hairdresser. And so I'll make the kids breakfast and I'm going to take them to school and I'm going to have my hair done. And she's got all these little pinpoints of references which are the stick and it's not really her that's talking. It's something that's teaching her how to create these stresses, these sticks and carrots at certain geographical points along the way. And the moment, let's talk about what happens when the chain breaks. She gets up in the morning and the kid's got a cold. Now she can't go to the hairdresser. Now she gets upset with the kid. See? And she gets upset. Now she got another motivation. Now she feels guilty. And when she feels guilty, she takes the kid to the doctor not out of love, but out of guilt. See? And she does everything out of guilt. And she does everything out of setting all these different goals. If the goal works and it works out good, then she learns that works. But she shouldn't be learning that it works. It's not supposed to work. If it doesn't work, she gets upset. And she tries harder to make it work. But all these motivations are against the grain of our true being. And eventually they will make us sick. You're damned if they work, and you're damned if they don't work. Now in a few minutes I'm going to talk about motivations in school, and motivations from teachers, and high-pressure tactics from salesmen and things like that, how it robs us from our own motivation. But there's a question in the audience coming up now.
Yes, Roy, you just hit on something that I'm going through right now as far as goals, putting pressures on.
Putting pressures on yourself.
Yeah.
If somebody doesn't do it, you do it to yourself, you know.
Yeah, well, I've been meditating for about a year now, and I found that that's what I've been doing to myself for so many years, putting pressures and pressures.
And where did that come from?
I don't know.
You're a child of pressure. When you were young, mother pressures you, school pressures you, the kids pressure you. You want approval, you have to go along to the pressure to get your approval, right?
Yes. Now I'm still used to doing that now.
Well, now you have to break free.
I know. That's
a tough one,
it's like,
isn't it?
yes. For me it is because
but do you want to become a new person?
I do.
I imagine you're a Christian gentleman.
I am.
And you want to know what it means to die and be born again, to lay down your egocentric life and pick up the spiritual life. Because unless you lay down, unless you stop responding to the pressures, unless you realize that you are a child of pressure and it's a selfish nature that is the child of pressure, unless you realize there's something wrong with the way you exist, there won't be that cry up the antenna of your soul. It's a sort of languageless language. It's a scream, a silent scream, isn't it? Save me from this, but there's no words, right?
How do you lay it down, though?
How do you lay it down? Well, the meditation, there's your key. That's why the good Lord in His wisdom, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, I'm getting older and I'm almost 60 now. Forget when, but this finger came down. And this little tiny little guy, when I was born, he says, "You teach them meditation." See, teach them the way to me. Show them how to be still so they can know how to be what I want them to be. Because what the Father wants you to be, little children have a good father, and you obey the Father because the Father knows the dangers. Well, you don't know the dangers because you're not aware, but the Father is aware. He can't impart that awareness to you only up to a certain point. And to the degree that you obey the Father, you see what you've avoided. But to the degree that you don't obey the Father, you see what you got into. And then it gets into you. And then this pride of life begins to spring up. And now you're dependent no longer on the motivation from the Father, but the motivation from your friends to feel comfortable. See what I mean? To have any life at all. But what life is it? Now.
But like with me, it's gone on so long that it's so
it's
hard.
Part of your life, but
yes.
you're very young.
Well, I've experienced that this is part of my problem as far as, coping with a lot of my problems is this pressure. I always put it on
right,
myself.
where is it now? Whenever you feel pressure, I'm sure now when you feel pressure, you feel antsy.
Very.
Is that the right word, antsy? Restless? You feel the forces moving through you to make you do something. Wash the car, take another snort, right? Whatever it is, it's making you do something you know that you're going to be sorry for, right? Set a goal. You can't be anything without a goal, man, right? That's how it tells you.
It seems like that's what my whole life's been based around, is a goal.
All right, but that's the distraction, and the involvement of that distraction perverts your nature. Because remember I said in the last session, any distraction, even if it's the TV, watch the TV, day after day, night after night. The kids will what? It will turn them into savages, not because the TV is doing it, but the TV is distracting them from growing as human beings can grow, discovering themselves. If you see people walking around with those little Walkmans stuck in their ear, now they're listening to this distraction all the time. As long as they're listening to this distraction, they cannot listen to their conscience, and if they cannot listen to their conscience, it cannot become the force in their lives. And they see, and the selfishness. But see, all selfish people, the hallmark of a selfish person is not to want to face reality, because if you face reality, you as reality cease to exist. You feel like you're dying. You feel bored to death.
Like if I let this go,
You're gonna
this
die.
part of that. What else is there?
What else is there? There's only wine, women. What else is there, right? Yeah.
You know, it's
You're
like
giving up life, right? Your whole life, your whole life revolves around that which gives you pleasure and power and ego boost and completeness, right?
That's what I'm fighting.
Yeah, but you see, to take you beyond this point, young man, can I call you young man?
Yes.
I'm an old man, so you can. To take you beyond this point, you've got to realize that there's something beyond that, as I said, the eye hath not seen, the ear hath not heard it, nor has it entered into the heart of man what God has prepared for those that love him. Meaning that you know there's something better than this, and you know this isn't it, because you've got to have some experience with sin to know that what it is, what it isn't. And you think it's it. Everybody gets into it because they think it's it. It's a way of life. It's happiness. See, but when you get into it, you realize, if you have any sense, that there's something wrong with what you thought was good and groovy. Is that right?
I was thinking about
Just gentleman over here. We'll come back to you in a minute. You can keep standing.
I was thinking about what Peter told Jesus. He says, "Where can I go? You have life." What is there?
Are you saying that to me, I hope?
Yeah. What is there?
I'll
Where
be
else?
having fun here. Look,
What is there?
We
There's
sit here for
nothing
2.5 hours, and you could sit here for 5 hours, and yet it's fun. There's something fun in discovering truth. But I've discovered these truths. I've just got the power to verbalize them, thank God. You will discover them too. And when you discover them, they'll animate you. They'll give you force. They'll give you power. There's no greater force, no greater power in the world than goodness. And you've got to find it. Evil has no power at all against goodness. You can take other people's goodness away by upsetting them out of their goodness when they're small and feel a sense of power, but you're only powerful against the weak, but you're weak before the strong. And it's a dog-eat-dog existence, and hell is at the top. It's sort of standing over there in like a big pall of smoke somewhere. You know what I mean? So, yes, go ahead, keep standing.
Just question a little bit.
Go ahead.
You know that businesses run on pressure and deadlines and
It's
so on.
killing everybody.
Exactly.
That's why we've got so much dope and drugs and cocaine. It's driving us to that.
I agreed, but businesses and government run on pressure and on deadlines. So what you're saying is...
Deadline is the right word for it, isn't it?
what you're saying, yeah.
It isn't a live line, is it?
But what you're saying is fine, but when we leave here and we go into our regular jobs, we have to go back to...
Well, this is how the foundation is run. Everybody is autonomous. And there's no managers. They all know what they must do, and everybody has their own motivation. And if I have to motivate them, well, I can always find out the people who need motivation, because without the motivation they won't do anything. They start taking advantage. They think you're weak. So they start goofing off and I fire them. Or I give them another chance to find their own motivation. But then they feel the pressure of not being motivated. And they start to resent you for revealing them to themselves. You see what I mean? They can't function without pressure.
I understand.
And they
what you're
hate you for
saying.
not pressuring them. That becomes the pressure to function.
But
Then they feel guilty for hating you. I really get them going, you know what I mean?
I understand what you're saying, but this is not the way business
But
is
I know,
run.
but this foundation is run this way. And everybody's getting better. Everybody, from the mailroom to the front desk, they don't want to leave here now, because I'm leaving them alone to discover their own motivation. And where they fall down, I face them with it. And they feel ashamed of themselves. And I'm not too strong with them. I'm not too hard with them. I let their conscience. If you're too hard with someone, they overreact to you, and pretty soon they start making up to you as if that could be made up for your approval. And they're damned if they get it, and they're damned if they don't. But I have a way, and you must be that way with your children. You must be because your employees will become healthy. They won't hardly have a sick day. And eventually they do more, and they're happier, and they're healthier, and they're more themselves, and they love you out of a loyalty that is pure, not a compulsive loyalty. Who understands what I'm talking about? Good.
I do.
Yeah,
I
go
love
ahead.
that. You were saying
Angela.
about working in business.
You can talk to me.
Okay.
Because you look so nice, I want you to talk to me. I get a good feeling out of it.
Okay, fine. Anyway, what this man was saying about business. I've recently just learned, I'm not in business, but I mean working with people. You just go and it's like you do your job, because you just have to close your eyes and forget that you're doing a job. It's like everything you do is supposed to, it's like it's developing your character. It's like every time you get up and get in your car and you go to work and you like I'm a sales girl selling clothes. You just do it, and you just be happy doing it, because you know that you're better.
But you found the motivation, Angela, haven't you?
Yeah,
You found it. Isn't it joy?
it's wonderful.
And in spite of everybody motivating you and pressuring you, you learn not to resent them. That's what you have to learn. What we have to do is carry on with this idea in our next session. Okay? So you have to wait till tomorrow night, which is only 2 minutes from now. I'll work time and space. Okay? Now the viewers, please, important announcement. We don't have much to sell. The cassettes and the book to teach you how to find your own motivation. It works. It really does. Most of the people here are finding it because of this magical thing. It's a very simple, cut and dried technology, and any child could learn it. As a matter of fact, it's easier for kids than grown-ups, because they've got some ego and pride to get out of the way. But it helps you to get it out of the way and helps you to find your center. And if you don't want to get started, just get the book for $10. But the whole package, the cassettes and everything, to teach you how to be self-motivated and happier and not pressured by the world around you, it's available for $33.50, or what you can afford. See, so in other words, you don't have to spend anything if you can't afford it. We are, a non-profit organization, a religious organization. We don't want your soul. We want you to have you. We want you to be you. It's a churchless church. You belong by not belonging, but commit yourself to this program by supporting it. I'm sorry to say, I spent $20,000, $30,000. I haven't added up yet. The last 3 or 4 months, and I think I got about $3,000, $4,000 back. So I can't do it. It's breaking me. And I was hoping that you'd find it in your heart to support the program, at least buy some of the materials, but it's not working out that way. So we've got a couple more weeks, and that's it. So it's up to you if you want to save us. Save me and I'll save you, okay? It's a deal. Thank you very much, and join us on the next program. Welcome once again. We're having a lot of fun in these discussion groups on how you control your emotions. And learning can be a lot of fun. I think you agree. And just look at this happy audience. They all learned a lot this last couple hours. We're talking about motivation and motives and how to get your own motivation. And we were having some questions. And I think, I think it's coming to the point now where I can sort of sit back. And who had some questions? There's a gentleman that was some unfinished business back there, wasn't there? Yes. Come on forward with your unfinished business, because I know we were jumping around away from you in our last session.
Well, like I was.
Hold on.
Okay. Well, like I was telling you, I have this confusion. It's a confusion now of I've been pressured so long to achieve, and I
You don't know how not to be.
I don't know how to stop it. It's like I'm aware that it's it's what
That's
it's
the
doing
beginning.
to me. Well,
And-
I'm aware of it,
But the
yet
awareness produces a pressure of its own, doesn't it?
it does. It's a confusing pressure. I don't know to stop. I don't.
Well,
How to
may I
stop?
suggest that you observe, now that you're becoming aware,
Uh-huh.
you're aware also of the fact that you resent what you're looking at.
I resent it.
Yes. Is there any resentment in there? Does it disturb
Yes.
you? Does it irritate you that you can't function without pressure? That you're realizing how weak you are? You're realizing all these things, that you're subject, that you're not your own person,
No, I know that.
that
through
these
this.
needs for being motivated is
I
represents.
don't know if it's greed or I don't know if it's not greed. It can't be greed because I'd still be going on it.
I tell you what I do when I start to feel this external pressure building up, or the need for something building up. It feels like a little screaming in your bones, doesn't it? It's like your bones irritate, something like someone scratching a chalkboard with their fingernails. Is that about the feeling? You know, wonder why people commit suicide when they have that these two pressures, the outer pressure, the need for the outer pressure, and the guilt for it, and the pressure on that side of guilt building up, trying to be your master, trying to come into you and be an identity inside you. See? To make you dependent on the pressure of being still, rather than the pressure of not being still. Who understands the difference between the pressure of being still and the pressure of not being still? Because you can escape the pressure, the will of the Father on earth as it is in heaven, and you get into your own selfish act, the reinforcement for selfishness by getting away from that divine will, because then your own will seems to be then revived, right? A new lease on your old selfish life. You feel like you believe in yourself again when you're involved in that pressure. You come alive in a wrong way, guilt. So, well, I tell you what I do. Whenever I haven't felt it for a long time, but when I do feel it, I go quietly to a chair, and I sit down, and I become aware of my hands, and aware of my thoughts, and I pull back, and I just feel my body aches. I feel all the funny currents in my body. I can feel the blood pulsating. I can feel an ache here or an anxiety there, and I feel like I want to run away from the moment. And I can just sit quietly, and I let whatever it is run, but I sit still. I let it go. I don't follow it. I see my thoughts pulling me away. I come right back to the center again, and I come back to anxiety. I'm coming towards anxiety. I'm coming towards the truth. Remember I said in the last session, when you're guilty of doing something, stealing from your dad, and you run off with the guys that told you to do it, and you've had your fill, and you feel guilty, and you're living like a pig somewhere, and you want to come back to your dad and make it good with your father, the closer you get to that door, the more scared you get. Is that right? So it's when you're coming close to the truth, instead of your anxieties disappearing for a moment, they will increase. So expect your anxiety to get worse before it gets better.
Do you think I could be resenting?
Oh, I think I saw the people smiled at that. Did you? You know, but it's the same principle, the analogy. See, and so therefore, when you sit still and you feel anxieties get worse, you think you're doing something wrong. And something tells you that, get out of here or something,
Do you think I could be resenting the pressure and it not being clear to me yet, or
You could be resenting your weakness. You could be resenting the process. You could be resenting the discovery of how weak you are and how you've always been a victim of something other than you. And, because after all, if you're the motivated, you're certainly not the motivator. You're inferior. You're the subject, not the God that you would like to think of yourself. There's always, we all get caught up in people who motivate us and love us and build us up and make us think we're something. But all they do is lift us away from realizing what really inferior beings we really are. We're caught up in the illusion But then illusion is what we're buying into. See? But there are illusion creators, illusion manipulators. And they're the God of the illusion that we're God. And when we hit reality, when the illusion, all the excitement of the partying is gone, and the love has died down, and the smoke is left, you start to see that you're an inferior being, that you're inferior to all the forces that motivate you, excite you, love you. And that the love is a deception. See? That's broken you down and you've been deceived by it. And yet you see yourself needing it and willing to serve for it. You see yourself needing and being willing to enslave yourself and to grub in the dirt for it. You see that's wrong and you have to do the wrong and you resent knowing it. Is that right or not? Something like that, isn't it? Well, that's the thing that you're going to have to face. There's no transition without the stark reality of that realization. And that's why I sit down quietly. And for me, it's gone past all of that description. To me, I'm way on the other side. I'm not there yet, but I'm way on the other side of the process than you are. But it's still, every now and then, I feel this anxiety, just not bad. But I don't wait for it to get bad. I remember one day, I have to tell you the story. 25 years ago or so, I'm crossing the street. Get this, I'm crossing the street. All of a sudden, I lose the motivation to cross the street. Suddenly I could cross the street all right. I had to make myself cross the street. We have to kick our donkey. You know what I mean? Translates into other forms of language. But the point is we have to, stick ourselves with a pin or, find some mental way of force ourselves to do something that should be perfectly natural. But the reason is because at that point, I've done everything through the meditation and finding this inner motivation so that the motion of the soul was my natural way of life. It was becoming my natural way of life. And that's why I get up every morning and plug into the source of motivation. So I should not be motivated by selfishness and lower desires and compulsions. I should make the right decisions because I can see right. I can see what wrong is, and I can see by the light of right that I love. So I'm submerging myself, instead of submerging myself in my distractions and thinking them up for the day, you know what I mean? And pre-programming myself for all those strategic, little things for the day. I'm foregoing that. Every time my mind fills with something to motivate me and to set me up for this or that, I deprogram myself by not going along with that, not setting the pace, not setting the programming, because we discussed that before. And so therefore I keep pulling myself back, until all of a sudden everything gets very, very quiet. The anxiety gets a little worse, and all of a sudden the pressures build up to be involved with thoughts that pressure, you know what I mean, that excite, fantasies, angers, little conversations in your head. Oh, I shall wash the car. You see yourself washing the car, and you're into washing the car, and there's no car there. Right? See? And then pretty soon you get up, you feel like you want to wash the car because you programmed yourself with an idea. Or something has programmed you. You can't really program yourself. There's something in there, some hypnotist in there programming you. And you think it's you that's doing it to you. That's because you can't see that it isn't you. You're so involved in the distractions. Anyway, I just let the pressures build up, the anxieties, and all of a sudden, at a certain point, as I come towards the light of God, the realization, as I approach and come through that door, I get into Him, and He gets into me, and He drives the pressures away, and He drives all the thoughts away that I'm have been normally subject to, and He drives the will away that I'm subject to. I'm free. I have known the truth, and the truth I've been intimate with. Adam knew his wife, and he didn't know her. Hi, how do you do? He was intimate with his wife. He was into his wife. And see, so you shall know the truth. You shall get into the truth. You shall have intercourse with the truth. You shall be familiar with the truth. You submerge yourself with the truth, and the truth will be into you. And that will free you, because the spirit that you now serve will be the spirit of goodness, and you can't serve evil. You cannot serve evil. You can't do it. You won't be able to do it. You'll have the power to make choices, and you'll have two things. You have the realization of what right and wrong is, and you're absolutely sure you know you're right, and you have strength in it, and you have the force, the impulse. Remember I started off the other night by saying impulse. The truth will give you power. Because when you know what right is, and you believe what right is and it's right, then the belief into it is the energy. There's energy from that. The power to choose, the power to break old habits, to break the spell of satanic spells, forces. And that's when you hear me talking to you. I haven't rehearsed any of this, because when I sit alone in my room, or I'm on off duty. See, I'm on duty right now. When I'm off duty, I'm just an ordinary guy. The guy next door thinks I'm just, we go out fishing together and we never talk about truth, and we laugh and we drink a soda. Sometimes I drink a beer. Yeah, very rare, but I'm not that snooty. And he doesn't know anything. We never talk about these things. I'm just a fun guy. I'm off duty.
Another thing that I became aware of through the meditation on this pressure was like, okay, I was working quite a bit to achieve my goals.
Right, now we're coming back today. How did I get away from that?
I don't know.
But it's a full circle, isn't it?
Well, what it was I was working to have a house and income property and stuff.
You had a goal.
Yes.
Well, it won't work that way.
Well, I achieved them, but then I kept.
But you're not happy with them.
No, I'm not.
See? And so you're damned if you get it and you're damned if you don't. Everything you get for yourself. Is that right?
Yes, but now, okay, through the meditation, now that I learned that was a pressure that I was putting upon myself, I seen that working was a pressure for this goal. And when I had it, okay, I said,
well, you want to cure the goal? You want to cure the pressure? Cure the goals. Just say, be like what Christ was with his Creator. He says, not my will be done, but thy will be done. In other words, don't have any goals. When Jesus was asked about such things as we're talking about tonight, he said, seek first the kingdom of God and his right way, and all other things will be added as a matter of course. But we don't do that. We seek the things to be added first, and we take pride in the things that are added. And we try to bring them about. We think Cadillac. We think house. And there's this house. And this leads you, but it leads you away from reality. And the forces of motivation, which are dark, are operating through that. See? Through the things of your egocentric and selfish desires. So when you get there, you are further from reality than when you first started. So you feel emptier. Now you feel guilty. But then the thing inside you says, the reason why you feel guilty is because you don't have a big enough house. And you don't have a big enough wife.
That's my wife.
And you don't have enough education. Set a bigger goal. You say, oh, that's a good idea. That's the reason why I feel guilty. But if you're a cannibal, it would say to you, the cannibal shrink would say, the reason why you feel guilty is because you only ate one person this week. You have to set a goal to be two. So that works. While you're working towards the goal, it distracts you from guilt. And it gives you something called hope. False hope for the false. And you feel like you're working towards something, but you're working to the completion of your foolishness. And when you get there, you're further from reality, and you see that you're a complete fool. Something is empty. We call it ennui, right? An emptiness. And then you think to yourself, what's going on here? I've got a house, a bigger wife. I don't like big wives. I want a thin one. But then you set another goal. But then what happens is you discover that you lose all your motivation. You don't want to have it. So therefore you drink yourself under the table. You spend all your money on wine, women. You start to be generous to get rid of the guilt. Because now you got the guilt. You got guilt with guilt. You know what I mean? Guilt is money, Jewish for money. So you got the guilt with the guilt. And so therefore you feel guilty for having it. Now you give it all away. But you got you got those material things to insulate yourself from being hurt, to feel important, to feel like you were somebody. But instead, it makes you feel like shaving cream. Right? It does. And so you see, if you have it, if you, the person who works towards something and doesn't get it feels like shaving cream. And the person who gets it feels the same way, because just moving towards something that's forbidden is moving away from what is good and pure. You see, and is allowing the dark side to enter you. So you find that rich people who are successful are cocaine addicts because they're getting rid of the guilt. They're spending all their money. They want to get rid of it because it burns a hole in their pocket. They don't feel like they deserve it. They feel guilty for having it. Or they lose all their motivation. They lose their reason for motivation. So they give it all away and start all over again because they need a pressure, a deadline, and the money takes it away.
Right now, when you said losing motivation, that's where I'm at right now.
You got your house? And are you strapped with your guilt now?
I have
your guilt and your guilt.
Well, that and then now I'm just, all motivation's gone.
Right. And that's what happens when you give children too much.
Okay, so
you take their motivation away and then you yell at them.
No.
And then they got the wrong motivation. Is that right?
Now that's where I'm at, right there. I'm right there.
You have to yell at yourself, or you want someone to scream at you.
Exactly.
You got to give your house away so you can have the motivation.
now on the job, it's like, well, okay, So where do I pick up?
That's why you never pay a worker before he does the job, because you give him the pay, he won't do the work.
I find myself giving away work. I don't need it no more. It's like,
Yeah.
Where before I would take it all in. So now, how do I fix all this?
I don't know. I kind of gave you the answer, though. See, because you're beginning to realize that you must seek first the kingdom and the right way. See, everything, I have nice things. I didn't steal it, I earned it. I got it the old-fashioned way. See? But how do I earn it? I'm wise with it. I deny myself. I remember long before I started the foundation, I was earning $50 a week, but I was saving $25 and I was married. I lived in a house that was $60 a month, and the termites were coming out of the... Every time you turn the lights out, the termites would come out. And they'd take the place away. But the point is, I lived in it, and I didn't feel poor or deprived. I swapped the diamond ring for the equity, and I sold it. Then when I moved out a year later, I had a couple of $1,000s that I didn't have before. See? And the ring was only worth $100. But that's all the guy wanted was that. See what I mean? I made deals all the way along. I swapped a boat for a boat for a house. I don't know. I did all kinds of things, but I made my money grow. And I remember taking a nickel and seeing where I could buy a candy bar because I was hungry. But I decided I didn't need it. So I put the nickel in my pocket. But you see, I started a whole slew of good habits. Never give in to your lower feelings. Never give in to your lower feelings. Never. And as I've grown older and wiser and accumulated money, did he break his neck or something? Did he eat his own microphone? Turn the mic off so that it won't make a noise. But as I've listened to myself, don't buy a candy bar. Put it in your pocket. Don't do this. Don't buy yourself a new shirt. You don't need it. Right? All the things, all the impulses, what do I really need? You'd be surprised how few things you really need. How little you can get by on and still be presentable and dignified. And meanwhile, the less you need, the more free you are. Because you're free from the distraction of the indulged need, right? And the more free you are, the more you know the truth. And the more the truth will say, you see this money? Put it over here. Oh, wow, bang. And before you know it, you know things that no one else is privy to. You have an insight. It's almost like you have some kind of inside information in Las Vegas. Because everything starts to work while everybody's gambling and drinking their money away and wine and feeling important and yielding to themselves and becoming less and less wise, because the more guilty they are, the less they want to see wisdom, because in the light of wisdom they see what jerks they are. without wisdom, they see themselves in the light. When you go to a bar, and what do? A little coffee shop or a little place, they always turn the lights down because everybody looks better when the lights are darker. Right? Everything looks better when there's less light, right? But the point is, I'm coming out of those little dens of iniquity and I'm coming up to the light and I'm seeing things and everything goes naturally for me. And if I want something, this is what happens. If I want something, I'd like to have a boat like that one day. I'm into boats. I like boats. But I say, I don't smoke, I don't drink, I don't do anything. I like to go fishing. Besides, I think I'll have to get away from this country one of these days anyway. But I think to myself, yeah, I like that. But then I don't go out and get it. I don't go rushing. I'm not the kind of person that rushes out and buying it right away. I just, that's nice. I'd like that. But it's almost like the Father in heaven within me takes note of that. And I go out being wise and all of a sudden the opportunity presents itself. And I have always said, as part of wisdom, is that you can always have something you can make a profit. You can always afford something you can make a profit on. Therefore, I live like a rich man, but I'm not rich. Because you can always afford something you can make a profit on. There's no point in buying something credit and losing half the value, just selling it a year later. That's any idiot can do that. See, so therefore, everything I have has, even my furniture, I used to buy and sell it. I was having different furniture every week. People would come, is this the same house? See? But the point is, I was just being wise with my money because that's important. And by listening to my wisdom and not listening to that which pulls me away from it and the part that self-indulges me, you see, gives me ego, I'm coming closer and closer to reality, and I have insights which you don't have. Therefore, I can buy gold and silver, and I can go in and be buying and selling when you come in to buy. I'm making money and you're losing your shirt. See? You're motivated by excitement. You say, oh boy, the gold is going up. And you rush in to buy the gold, and next day it goes down. But I already bought it 6 months ago. See what I mean? Insight. Now, some people have only that side of them. They understand. But the point is, you can have that insight to everything. See? And the Bible says you will have, He'll open up the windows of heaven, and you shall have not room enough to receive it. But it begins by denying yourself. You begin by making yourself poor and not thinking Cadillac. Not thinking big house, big wife, big mama. Big mama. And looking for a mama to help you to agree that these motivations, because your whole life revolves around something that says it's okay to be wrong. Is that right? Who's getting the message? Hooray! Go ahead now.
Okay, expanding on what you were saying before about seeking the kingdom of, God, and then everything else, you'll get that afterwards.
It does. It comes by itself.
That's, when you do it that way, you realize that no matter what type of job you do, if you're a shoe shine boy, you'll be great.
Right. I remember
so you
working.
lose your ambition when that happens.
No, you won't. You won't.
Well, not motivation, but the ambition, the drive, like he was saying, but like the man before was saying, he has goals. He wants to do this. He's driven. He has to do it this way.
No. You see, it is special people like you and me. We know that when I'm working in a sweatshop, as I used to, cutting gems, it's a sweatshop job, that I knew I was no different from any of the other guys there. But when I go back 20 years later, those guys are still there because they're spending money on drugs and cigarettes and having fun. And me, I was different. I didn't yield to those things. So they're there. I could afford to leave. They couldn't afford to leave. They were addicted to their job they hated after a while. And I wasn't addicted. I was addicted to my wisdom. And eventually my wisdom accumulated, and I had the strength of character to leave. See, because that's what strength of character is all about, having faith. And I had horizons I could see that they couldn't see because their horizons were being lowered while mine was being raised. So there was something different in me working than them. And their end is going to be different from my end. And I'm going to be happy and healthy and wealthy and wise. And the windows of heaven are going to open up and I won't have room enough to receive it. See? And you will too, if you will just be sensible. But you have to understand, seek first the kingdom, because that's what I did. I wanted, the first thing when I opened my eyes and knew I was conscious is, what do you want of me? What am I here for? You know, and most of you think, I'm here to get everything I can. You only live once. Grab all the gusto you can. Well, that's the way they are, you know. They're sitting in their old age in some kind of warehouse somewhere, in some room in the ghetto somewhere, or some in the inner cities. Well, thank you very much, and I hope that you've enjoyed this program and your life will take a different turn. And if I could be on every evening, Monday through Friday, I can only be on through your help. So you better do something quickly, because if you will help to save the program, I may be able to help save you, because I can't do it in one evening, but I've got you going, and I want to keep you going there. And you don't have to come to a foundation or a place. I can come into your living room, and so if I can pass the hat around right now, you just as an honor thing, please support the program. Otherwise, we won't be on the air. Thanks very much, and join us again. Welcome once again to the program, How to Control Your Emotions. And the subject under discussion is motivation. Motivation, and sources of motivation, good or evil. You take your character from what motivates you. What motivates you has something to do with what your motivation is, or what your motive is. See? Your motive and your motivation, the source of the motivation is motive. And if you have a selfish disposition, then you cannot take your motivation from the higher source. You have to go the low road, and you have to suffer, and you have to hurt, and you have to be hurt. And only being hurt and suffering and realizing there's something wrong with your existence and making it scratch your wooden head and saying, why? Why me? See? Only that when you ask the question. When you're really sincere about asking the question, and you don't ask anybody to answer the question because nobody can. You ask yourself. And there's a very special way of doing that. You've got to be very careful of a voice coming back and saying how wonderful you are. And you have to try harder. No, be like Avis, try try harder. Don't be number one, it's okay to be number two. You know what I mean? So you don't want to listen to those inner voices like that. It's the voiceless voice that you are to listen to. And the voiceless voice will exhort you to have faith, just to have faith. Now you'll see, when you look around, you look at the world and everybody is scurrying to and fro, working hard and being very ambitious and getting ahead and making money. And at 23 or 24, they're executives and they're driving around in their BMWs and everything. And you have difficulty learning and acquiring like everybody else. And you feel inferior, like there's something wrong with you. But I just want you to remember the story of the tortoise and the hare. It's a marvelous story. And if it is properly understood, and if the lesson is properly applied in life, you will be ahead of the hare. The children of the world, with their motivation and their music and their pressures to learn and to get degrees and their pride and everything like that, and everybody saying, oh, how wonderful he is and how clever he is, look how, ever seeing all that, don't be jealous of it. And don't feel inferior, because you can't go that way. You can try it and you find that learning is dull. You could try motivating yourself and you see that's silly, because you are made of different stuff. You're the tortoise. You're going to get there. And you're going to get there. When you get there, the faster they go, the behinder they get. That's what Confucius say. The faster you go, behinder you get. You see that pretty soon the whole world falls apart. Their marriages break up. They got ulcers. They got deep depression. They shoot themselves. Their business fails because they make some dumb move because they're too smart for their own good. And you see, you're just going to be plodding along, and you're going to be very patient. Don't worry. Be patient, because the trying of your faith, because faith isn't something you give yourself. You just know that the way those people are going is all wrong, that you're not, there's nothing, know the truth, there's nothing wrong with you for not being able to go as fast and as quick as those people over there. And then don't be jealous of the fact they have Cadillacs and Rolls Royces and everything, and their kids are going to the best schools and you're not making it. Just be wise and patient and watch for your opportunities. Wait. Save your money. Be sensible. Learn not to be angry and don't feel anxiety because other people. Don't set goals for yourself. Don't study too hard. Do the things that you're interested in. Do the things and do it well. Give people a fair shake. don't steal from them and take advantage when you could. You're going to start building a relationship with people. It's so beautiful. You know, there's always a salesman who's selling his first car or his first sale. He's always selling. He's always selling because he feels like he's making something happen. Because his ego wants to make something happen. He has to motivate and pressure. See, well, everything will start to grow with you at a slower pace, but you will develop trust. You'll develop confidence. People will come into. People trust you. You trust them. You give them a good shake. You make their life better. They make your life. They keep coming back to you. There's something magical about you. The world will beat a path to your door. Excuse me, beat the path to your door. Go ahead.
Previous session, the gentleman over there and Angela were saying about the stresses in the corporate world, so-called. Yeah. Well, I found out that even though I don't meditate all the time,
you should.
The days that I do, and I have had whole days where everything just fell one thing right after another. I was just moving,
what I'm talking about.
one thing right after another, not even knowing what I was going to do next, because I might be going down the street and all of a sudden I'll turn into this one and I go stop by to see this guy and he says, yeah, well, how come you come by? I just was thinking about you. I've got to have this done.
There you go.
And it works out every.
But if you had a plan,
right.
you wouldn't have discovered that. It wouldn't have been natural. See, it's like if you had a plan and you wanted. Make a deal with a certain person, and you expected him to sign you up, and they for some reason they said no, you'd be all bummed out and upset. Correct. Because every time you set a goal and it doesn't work out, you get something called frustration. And frustration is always the evidence that you've set a goal and you're trying to make it work, and you're trying to force the person to eat it or to have it. And they got a will of their own, you know. So then when they see you got a will of their own, of your own, they start to exert the will of their own. And then they'll say no, and you get frustrated and you start hating the world. You see? Or you are successful. You browbeat some poor sucker into buying your product or doing this or that. And then you discover it works. But then when you discover that it works, you're discovering that being mean and manipulating and being the motivator and destroying others, knocking others down, building yourself up, see, taking the advantage of the disadvantaged, being strong before the weak, it gives you a sense of confidence which isn't real. It makes you dependent upon being a bully, a motivator. It gives you a false sense of power. But you have to be more ruthless. So the motivator and the motivated are both in trouble. The motivated is in trouble because he's not living his own life. He's letting this other person will his life through him, and experiencing from that a private hell. It's like being in a private hell, like a chain gang. Life is.
It's the reaction of our one awakening.
Come on. Well, it's okay, we had to wait for the microphone to come around. Go ahead.
I mean, we react to our own ambition. It's our ambition to push us to go into...
Our own failures upsets us, and we get motivation out of our upset. See, because that is what we've learned, to be motivated by people upsetting us. So therefore...
And then we respond.
We respond to our own mistakes. We respond to our own failures, but the whole idea of that is to simulate the energy, because people who are egotistical and selfish are not part of the God's plan. They've got plans of their own, but they haven't got any motivation. Only when you're plugged into the source of truth and you're free from the rat race of the world, you have a natural flow of things. When we don't have that natural flow, you see?
I did respond, I did respond, but what it saved me a lot was to be aware. What I'm doing, I'm responding. And then when I'm responding, I says, I'm wrong.
You're responding resentfully.
Then, yes, I was resented.
That's the key word.
I'm resented. So it took me step by step. Yeah. But it took a long time to understand it.
But just give me a chance. It took you a long way to be. Rome wasn't built in a day. Salvation is a process. You're not there instantly. It's a road you're traveling toward a light.
I still sometimes to pull back, but then I be aware again. I said, what I'm doing? Oh, the same mistake. Then it changes. It's like a change in a page.
But there's a change in your life. And you see, when you make goals and you get frustrated. Anybody frustrated here? It's because you are setting a goal.
But it was my own ambition.
Or what you think of as your own ambition. there may not be anything in your life that is your own. That is what.
No, it comes from pressure of my mother.
There, like I said, there may
Yes.
not be anything in your life. The goals that you have to be somebody may not be your goals at all, but something that was drummed into you when you were a kid. So that,
Right.
see, and you glorified the person. This is my son. Proud of him. Great lawyer.
I was
See, that's-
motivated by my mother.
See,
and
I made him what he is,
conformist.
huh?
I conform to my mother's will. Right.
And that becomes the goal. Your mother lives on through you, even if your
Right,
mother's dead. She's
right.
still setting goals for you.
But I never knew. I was very ignorant.
Who understands
until-
Yeah, see, look at you. Just look at you.
I was very ignorant until I found until my husband introduced me to your meditation.
Yes.
And I reject you because I
Why?
found, I reject the meditation at first because I thought I found something like you was pressuring me like my mother. So
You transferred that to me.
yes, Yes.
Because
yes.
you're such a creature of
And I
pressure.
said, oh no, I'm not going to listen to this guy. This guy is just making money with his tapes. But then my husband never pressured me, so I leave me alone. And then one night I said, I think he says something sensible, so I turn on your meditation.
Good for you.
And then I got it. And I
But
started
let me stop you there, and you can, because there's some good ideas here.
But I resent you. I resent you because
It was the truth.
it was the truth. You
And
told
the
me
mother
the
and you didn't
truth.
like it.
But I got the identity in my mother, the
Yeah, there you
frustration
go.
I have
That's
so
right.
bad in my soul.
Sure.
It was very deep in the root of my soul.
Yeah.
I found you in my mother, so I hate the first meditation. I resent you.
No, you see, you transferred. What you did is you transferred the qualities of your mother to me, so you didn't have to listen to me.
That's what I
It was a trick. See, the obvious pressures you give into. I mean, the not so obvious pressures you've given into. You've always given into pressure. But you see, I represent the truth, and I'm making you conscious of what pressure is. I'm making you conscious. But so the minute I make you conscious of pressure, since you're a creature of pressure, you tend to respond to me. And I'm not pressuring you. I'm not meaning to pressure you. But the fact that I'm telling you something and making you aware of yourself, you're beginning to see yourself responding to me as though I were pressuring you, because you don't know how to function without reacting
It
to
was my own ignorance.
your own conditioning.
Yes. Yes.
Don't you see that people, whenever I try to correct people, they say you're down on me, and I just try to correct. I say, hey, now look, you're doing something wrong. I had a little argument with my son-in-law, about the ranch a little while ago, and I never say anything to him. But for the first time, I started bringing something to his attention because I think it needed to it. He started to react to it as though I was down on him, I was pressuring him. I wasn't but that's the excuse for not doing it. You're pressuring me. But you see that what it is it's still a sensitivity to the world. The minute he's confronted by something, the minute a person is confronted, no matter what it is, truth, another will, you feel pressure. The dark side of you feels pressure, because you feel almost like the pressure of your own conscience, because I represent your conscience. I represent on the outside what's going on the inside. So here I'm saying, hey, that's wrong, and you instinctively are made conscious, but at the same time you're conscious of some kind of pressure. You see?
Sometimes when a pressure comes, it starts something like coming angry. I said, it's coming angry, and something comes angry. What is that? I don't know.
But that's the anger. That's the anger that I was talking about a few moments ago, because you have to be upset. You have to be resentful in order to get the motivation, the spiritual motivation for your ego to function. All of our lives, there's one thing that's connected us to the sources of motivation for our selfish fallen nature, and that's called resentment. We even resent the goals we set when we make a mistake, and we get frustrated. If you look carefully at that frustration, you'll see an ingredient in there called resentment, and they serve the evolutionary process of pride. It only challenges us. It gives us the impetus to come over the situation with our own ego. But what develops is not a better human being, but a better animal. If you have a person challenge you, and you become resentful, and because you feel inferior because they are stronger than you, the tendency is for you to resent that person, because there's a tendency for the ego to fall to the process of evolution, what we call evolution, rather than involution. Because the only way the ego can evolve is by interacting with something and taking the strength or the identity of the thing that you're interacting with. So you need something bigger than you to upset you, because out of your interaction with that person, you're taking in the intelligence and the strengths. It stimulates you to be a bigger dinosaur. Follow that? So in other words, the evolution of our ego self has something to do with responding to pressure, because it does two things. It serves as a distraction from what's wrong with us, and a motivation to complete the process of becoming prideful, bigger than the thing that challenge us. See, we need the challenge, but we also, now the correct way is not to respond to challenge. Is to learn to be patient, to recognize this little ingredient, this ego support, the ego bonding to the sources of our ego evolution, and to cut the nutrient and the bond to our hell on earth. The personality that is evolved through the hell on earth. That is to say, you realize there's something wrong with the way you exist. You see that pride evolves from challenges and goals and interreacting to our own to the mistakes we make. See? And you sit back and say, just a minute. There's something wrong with that. As this lady is beginning to see, there's something wrong with her own resentment and anger. See? And she sits back and she lets the anger pass. What happens? The bond between us and the temptation we need to evolve who we think we are, the ego animal self, is broken. The bond is broken, and now a new understanding comes in, a new wisdom. We are introduced to a new source. When you break the affinity for the old source, it's because of a source within you that's beginning to make itself known and assert itself, becoming a motivating force in your life. And listen to the words of, who is it? Paul? Someone correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not a great student of the scriptures. I know enough. Count it a blessing, brethren, for the trying of your faith worketh patience. Don't be afraid to meet with diverse temptations, for the trying of your faith worketh what? Patience. Let patience have its perfect works, that you may be entire or complete in a right way, lacking nothing. Because everything you are and everything that you could be is within you already, waiting to unfold. There's nothing outside. Therefore, you can be endlessly patient. Realizing that, faith. You reach for nothing. You don't let what other people goad you or to tempt you into trying to keep up with the Joneses. To hell with them. Let them go ahead any way they want. You move at your own speed. You do not... I remember years ago, I was very athletic. I suppose I could have been a world Olympic champion in something. I ran the 100 yards in 10 seconds without any training. So that's very fast. Just being ordinary. So I remember being in some kind of junior Olympics in London just before the war, only as a young kid. And I looked back in this relay race to see how far ahead. I was far ahead, of everybody. I looked back, and as I looked back, the guy next to me got in front of me. See? In other words, I looked back because I needed the motivation to be faster than the other person. But if I'd run on my own motivation, never paid any attention to anybody, I'm way ahead of everybody else. The trouble is, we need something to challenge us. And I'm telling you, move at your own speed. Don't let people intimidate you. Don't let knowledge and degrees and money. You will be rich beyond your wildest dreams. You will be successful, especially in America. If you can't be successful here, you really are a jerk. It's 7% of the people can't get a joke. They're all jerks. They're not employable. There's a guy sitting around. How long have you been out of work? Well, 6 years. There's no work in town, you know. Town's got, there's 15 people left. Well, why don't you go out from... Well, the work is gone and there's nothing left. There's no horizons. There's no... Something's addled in their brain. I would have left that town years ago. I would have seen it coming. I would have been in my own business years ago while they were still drinking themselves under the table and wenching and whoring around. See? There's something different in me, and in some of you there's a difference. Some of you will be just left high and dry because some of you are not even here. Some of you are not even here to learn anything. Some of you have come here to judge me. When I first started my program 27 years ago, I used to have people come to my house like this. And I would give them coffee and a little pastry and we'd sit and talk a little bit. And people would come and they'd listen. But they didn't come to listen to me, a lot of them. Come to find out later on, they saw my kids running around and they saw how rambunctious they are and sometimes a little disobedient. And they're sitting there judging. See, he's not perfect. His kids are not perfect. And they're judging, they're resenting. They didn't come. How many people come here to find fault? Come on, be honest. Is anybody here? I was hoping one hand would go up at least. You know what I'm talking about, don't you? A lot of people listen. Maybe they're not courageous to come to here because they're afraid I might see through them. But there are a lot of people who watch TV and listen to my radio. They don't listen for your reason. They're listening to find fault, to judge, to laugh at me. Their motivations aren't the same. Or some people listen to me and they misuse my teachings. They misuse my They get caught up with Roy Masters and they get high and that sort of thing, and they start preaching to everybody as if they understood when they really didn't, and turn everybody off. And then what are their motivations? Their motivations are like the false Christians today. How many people have been turned off by Christianity? How many people here? I figured. The reason is, when the bats get in the belfry, when the wrong kind of people listen to the teachings of Jesus, and they get caught up in the religion, and then they go from door to door as if they were saved and they could save you, and they preach to their children as if they had God in their hearts and Jesus in their hearts. The whole motivation is to get high on religion, not to become humbled, but to feel like because the more they learn, the more they are. And therefore, because I know, you don't know. And you learn from me, and they feel important. And then what they're doing is the children see this hypocrisy, and everybody else sees this hypocrisy. Two things happen. Either you feel upset and guilty, and you think, well, how can, maybe there is something wrong with me, and you join the church. And now you run around like a little wind-up toy for the rest of your life, wrongly motivated by the right things. Got it? And then you've got confusion, and you're alcoholic, you get cancer, you die, your family falls apart. You see? You get married to a woman who self-righteous woman just like your mother and all the rest of it. Or you turn off. You drive people away from the very religion that could save them. Well, if this is God and Christianity, if Jesus is this, I don't want nothing to do with it. I'd rather go to pot. And that's where all the kids are. See? But the purpose, the hidden motive of people who are hypocritically religious, who get caught up in these religions, these self-righteous so-and-sos, the motive, some people are just caught up temporarily. Some people are locked right into it, fanatically Christian. Do you know Jesus? Have you been saved by the blood? Yeah? Right? You believe in the Trinity? And if you answer any different, from what they think, you're doomed. See? They're totally rigid and locked in, hypnotized zombies. But the purpose of these people is not pure. And the purpose of the religion itself is not pure. It's to religiousize people and keep them proud, to make them feel good, to serve them that potion of religiosity which doesn't change them one iota. It just pumps them up and makes them feel like they're good and they can still sin and not feel guilty about it because Jesus saves them. You know what I mean? So But the purpose of people being that way, you think, oh, everybody searching for religion is pure and their motive and motivations are pure. No, it's because they take that religion and pervert it. Just like the communists and the agents of America are slowly infiltrating into the institutions of the country, the school systems and everything, and slowly perverting it, and so that people respond to the perversion of that and are driven not to learn, not to study, to be, see what I mean? It's happening in America. It happens in your family, it's happening in your church. And the purpose is it to confound and confuse and to drive people away from the very good that could save them. That is the motive for hypocrisy. It is evil bats got in the belfry. Anyway, finished with motivation. Don't pressure your children. Don't pressure yourself. Don't allow anybody to pressure you. Find some inner something. Give up that pressure. Stop setting goals. Be patient. See? For through patience, possess ye your soul. It's the mark that you have the faith that I'm speaking about. Being anxiety for nothing. Take no thought for tomorrow. See? For things will take thought of themselves. You see? See? Don't worry about what you should put in, on and eat and drink. For the heathens, they do all this. Because the Father knoweth what you need before you ask. Just seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all other things will be added as a matter of course. It will come. Have you ever gone out to buy something in a hurry and then saw it on sale next day and kicked yourself? And then you weren't happy with it anymore? Wait for it to go on sale. Thank you very much. Support the program, because if you don't support the program, we've got about 1 or 2 weeks left. All my money's run out, and I'm broke as far as this program is concerned. It's run its course, and there doesn't seem to be much future. You support me, and I'll help you. Otherwise, I cannot, and I'm going to be just as happy doing something else, somewhere else, for other people. Somewhere else, somebody will appreciate what I'm doing, but not on this channel. All right? Thank you very much, and join us in the next program.